So if anyone on your leadership team or anyone in your community would like to take part but hasn't been able to join the call, this will be posted to the Leader Resources page of our website, shared out in the next edition of the Leader Links monthly email, and also posted to the Slow Food USA community and chapter leaders Facebook page when it is available on the website. During the call today, we are going to do some presentation at the beginning. If you have any questions, you're welcome to use the chat function in the GoToMeeting control panel. You can send your questions in and we will record them, keep track of them, and answer them. At the end, you'll see we have a nice chunk of time set aside for question and answer today. We're hoping to have a nice lively conversation. So do use that chat box to enter your questions. Unfortunately, if you're calling in via the phone number, we won't be able to take live questions in order to preserve the audio quality for the recording, but you can send any questions by email to chapters@slowfoodusa.org. That's chapters@slowfoodusa.org, and we'll make sure to answer them during the call as well. All right, so thank you again for joining. With that, I think I'm going to hand it over to our Executive Director, Richard McCarthy.
Megan, thank you so much. Can you hear me out there? Great, great. Okay. Hey, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well on this Friday afternoon and hope that we've timed things to coincide with either tea time, coffee time, or cocktail time, depending upon your time zone. We are happy to share with you how elements of the new strategic direction are beginning to hit the road. I know that a month ago when we shared with you, here is where the findings from our strategic plan have informed our new strategic direction. It is certainly a hell of a lot easier to just tell the story than it is to actually follow through and begin to make the changes for our work moving forward. And in our office, and what I found traveling around this winter is we're now moving beyond just the talk stage. We're now starting to walk in this new direction. And today what we were excited to share with you is what this means in terms of our work with gatherings. As you may recall, we landed with our strategic mission. The reason why we're here, the verb of what we do, is to inspire individuals and communities to change the world through food that is good, clean, and fair for all. And I would say that this was both an aha and a departure from our desires that we are building capacity. We are sending directives to a much more accurate, maybe in some ways troubling when it comes to how do you measure, but the idea of inspiration is undoubtedly what we see when we sift through the chapter reports, when we look and experience slow food individually, and certainly what we see throughout the world. If this changing of hearts and minds strategy is meant to inspire individuals so that they see the world differently, so that the world that we hope that they will see is one that is shaped by slow food values. Those three areas of work, and these three areas are ones that we will tackle in this call and in the next two calls. Today what we want to talk about is gathering. So when we began to look at the work that we do and the DNA of our organization from top to bottom, from the global gathering in Terra Madre, which for many is a conversion moment, one in which they, as I think of when I first experienced it, recognized, my goodness, I'm not alone. There are people like me. There are communities that are struggling with and solving and addressing many issues that we address in our own communities. This act of gathering is, in many ways, at the core of where we add value and also where we're different. Our gatherings are not staid academic panels where crowds of people arrive, they tell you what they're about to tell you, then they tell you, and then they told you what they've just told you. And meanwhile, everyone in the audience is asleep. There may be some quasi-academic panels to a slow food gathering, but whether it's what we see in a slow food chapter, whether it's a regional gathering, or whether it is Terra Madre, the gatherings are tactile. You lean forward, you get your hands onto things and learn through a wide variety of measures, not just through talking heads, but by touching food and tasting food. It's tactile, fun, and engaging. And you know, this is where, for our gatherings, and I think this is important from two standpoints. One is you've got to be there to be there. You cannot phone it in. You cannot run a video stream in order to understand the importance of why this sample of maple syrup tastes different from the terroir of another maple syrup. I mean, this is the importance of food and our tactile learning. I think this also matters because we assemble in our gatherings not just a group of people who know one another, but an incredibly wide array of people who arrive at a gathering with very different levels of education, of knowledge about food. So tactile experiences can be a leveler. It's a way in which we're all having the same experience. That shared experience can begin to create a shared community. And that helps to create a safe haven for learning. And I'd say that at the core, that is what we believe is so critical to our theory of gathering. And this is in some ways liberating, and I hope you should find this sea change as liberating as we do, which is when we seek funds for gatherings, we are forever self-conscious and concerned about, does this gathering lead to something? Is there a teleological outcome from our gathering? And I think that what we have learned from
all right, folks.
I am back in.
Great. Yeah.
I'm back in. The gods wanted to mute me, so sorry. I'm back in. Is that the outcome of the gathering is the gathering itself. Gathering unlikely allies, people from various walks of life, from field to fork, from lake to plate. That itself is the outcome. As opposed to, we are putting together a gathering and all of the participants in the gathering will follow this direction with military precision and do X or do Y. And I think if we begin to own the space of how we gather, why we gather, and the manner in which why our gatherings are different from other organizations' gatherings, then we can really own a space that I think we should own. It's something that makes us a better partner. It's one in which we attract more than just the true believers, but those who we meet people where they are and they feel safe in knowing that. So this idea of the theory of gathering is something that we will put into writing. So it's not a rambling conversation of how we gather, but a manifesto of how and why we gather. So with that, we then move to a place where gathering is a central component of our work. This is, as you may recall from last month's meeting, is that this is where we will be devoting a majority of our time and resources as a national organization. This is the future that we will be undertaking. And what it is based on is of course, a long-standing history and narrative within the organization, which is some of the best ideas have bubbled up from the ground and have been experimented with through our network and have grown to national, if not international, prominence. And with that, I specifically refer to Slow Meat. So Slow Meat in many ways began over a decade ago with the Westward Slow, a gathering to address this issue of better meat less and how best to turn the herd. Well, that experiment, which was led by Slow Food in the Rocky Mountain region, created a foundation on which, when we began to look at how can we gather our forces and provide an original and additive event in North America, we staged Slow Meat in Denver in 2014 2014 and 2015. We will utilize the slow meet as the meat of a gathering in Denver every 2 years, so the next one being in 2017, and build on that success and expand it. And while we have found it to be highly effective in very quickly going global, very quickly in attracting organizations that we have never worked closely with, and it has attracted and organized and mobilized the good meat crowd, the better meat crowd. What has not enabled us to do is to attract the less meat. How do we weave less meat into it? Well, I think we weave it into it by organizing around slow meat, which is a fairly well-developed conversation among delegates who participate with their own Facebook group, who participate with an ongoing discussion about the campaign for better meat, less. But what we need to rally around this is all of the other products that make it easier to talk about less meat. So whether this is slow grain, slow cheese, slow fish, is what we envision in a date that is yet to be determined, but likely to be June in 2017, is a North American slow food festival. We are excited to reach out to our neighbors to the north and to the south to begin to spark the idea of slow wine and slow grain and slow beer beginning to become identifiable communities who attend this slow food festival, and that this slow food festival, of course, be inward looking and that we have our discussions, but it also be outward looking. So this is a way to reach the general public, to reach families and individuals who are seeking inspiration, which is why this reinforces the idea of our core mission, which is to inspire individuals and communities to change the world. Now, if we begin to work this into our biennial calendar of large events, we hope that these large events will inspire our chapters to make of it that which you can. We have seen this with slow meat, and we're just beginning to sift through the chapter reports of the amount of slow meat activities that are taking place by local chapters. And what is taking place is a wider range of interpretations of what slow meat could or should be. And that is, I think, that is our way. It's not we do an event and therefore there's some very clear directives. There may be campaign work that comes out of an event, but the interpretation will hopefully be one that inspires, and there are local interpretations of what slow meat events could be in local communities. What we also hope will come out of it, and I think this is a slide worth sharing, because it gives you some sense of the timing that we're beginning to work on with our gatherings, is that you may recall me describing a Why We Gather manifesto that we will write and publish this spring, share in the magazine, share on the website, begin to describe what we think is unique about how we gather. Of course, before long, we will have an actual gathering that will hopefully attract many from the United States to travel to, which is Terra Madre, which is a marvelous reminder of why we gather. We will also begin to develop a plan for the right model, business model, set targets, audience size for a calendar of events that are both large and small. I mean, I think that one thing that we all know, attending large events, there's a logic to the business model of large events, but we don't want to dilute the value of and the quality of why we gather. And so that will be the challenge with the larger events. With the smaller events will be the question of when, where, what thematically would make sense, but taking these ideas on the road to begin to create excitement as we run towards 2017 for what will be our first big event on these shores in many years. And while certainly the comparisons to Slow Food Nation are obvious, the comparisons to Terra Madre are obvious, what we call it and the logistics of what that structure is what we'll be researching this spring and beginning to share by the summer as to how this will be structured and organized. Certainly, when we think of the regional gatherings that take place, whether it's like the regional meeting in the Midwest this winter, Slow Fish, which is just around the corner in New Orleans, which of course harkens back to memories of Westward Slow, in that the Slow Fish community is swimming forward with the idea of we want to have a gathering to talk about the future of food. Adventure potlucks in Vermont are some sort of amazing projects that we wouldn't have dreamt of, but you all dreamt of and thought that this is a way to gather people in a setting that is safe and inventive and tactile. Or the Gravenstein Apple Festival on the West Coast certainly strikes us as the kinds of smaller scale events that could begin to weave into a larger national narrative that, slow food, they're the folks who gather everyone. And how we present this on our national website, are things like a national calendar of events, so that we can begin to find, as an individual, you can begin to find where are these gatherings taking place. And I think maybe at this point it might be great to maybe turn to you, Megan, because what is upon us is, of course, the gathering that makes us very excited, the next edition of Terra Madre, which we know is more than just, oh, it's another Terra Madre. This will be a very different edition. The theme being loving the earth, certainly coming from Carlo's last book. I think is an amazing opportunity for us to contribute to an increasingly integrated global slow food movement. We have just recently released what the process is, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to maybe walk through what the processes are for this Terra Madre, because again, through the strategic planning process, we heard a great deal of very helpful feedback as to, gosh, I wish this process were simpler, less opaque, and we've integrated some of that feedback into what this year's Terra Madre process looks like. So if Megan, you are unmuted, I'll mute myself so that you can take this next stage.
Great. Thanks so much, Richard. So I think that this idea that gathering is one of the three central pieces of work that Slow Food USA will engage in going forward makes a lot of sense, and certainly comes out of the inspiration of Terra Madre. And when we talk to people about the Terra Madre Salone del Gusto event and attending it, what we often hear is that it's a catalytic moment, it's a conversion moment, not only that brings them closer to slow food as an international movement, but gives them inspiration to go home and do the work that they have either already been engaged in or to become more involved in the work that they're doing there in these local interpretations of the slow food theory of making good, clean, and fair food something that is real in their home community. So I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of Terra Madre Salone del Gusto so that we can sort of understand where this event is situated. And for those of you who have been before, help to know what some of the differences may be so that you can help to prepare the delegates that you'll be working with as best as possible. So this is the seventh Terra Madre Salone del Gusto. It is happens every other year and is the sort of flagship gathering of slow food as an international movement, when we bring together the educators, activists, farmers, bakers, fisher people from all over the world to inspire each other, to share their knowledge in a very open format, both through formal programming and through the informal connections and networking that they do while they're there. Terra Madre has been paired with Salone del Gusto, which is an event that came a little bit earlier historically, which was meant to really showcase the beautiful products of various slow food aligned producers. It was very much a marketplace. Terra Madre became a gathering to bring together the global network of these producers and activists in order to meet with and inspire each other. Since 2004, the first Terra Madre, which happened at the same time as Salone del Gusto, the two events have moved closer and closer together, so that today they are referred to as Terra Madre Salone del Gusto, one integrated event that brings together both the ethos of slow food and the commerce of slow food. So, in previous years, the event has taken place in the former Olympic Center in Turin, a very closed space, very similar for anyone who is sort of has ever been on the conference circuit or attended a few conferences, a very familiar setting. And a place that was not necessarily engaging with the community in which it took place, but asking the community where it took place to come to it, and was very successful in that, having 50,000 attendees a day, in addition to the several thousand delegates from over 200 countries that attended in the last edition, for example. But it began to feel a little claustrophobic and a bit as if the idea had outgrown the space. So this year, taking a cue from the general tone and direction within slow food, both in the US and internationally. And I certainly notice when I visit our local chapters at the chapter level, a desire to be more inclusive, to be more transparent and more open to the community that slow food is trying to engage with. So in light of that, Terra Madre Salone del Gusto will be moving outdoors into the city of Turin itself. In order to accommodate this move, the dates are a little bit earlier than in previous years. So Terra Madre will take place September 22nd through 26th, which is a Thursday through a Monday. This is to take advantage of some of the warmer weather. Northern Italy can get pretty chilly in late October and certainly is not reliable enough to host an outdoor festival. So the marketplace element of Terra Madre Salone del Gusto will be in the Parco Valentino outside, very beautiful. And the programmed events, panel discussions, workshops, tasting events, special dinners will be in venues throughout the city, from the University of Turin to museums, to palaces, to opera theaters. So it should be quite an interesting event and quite a logistical challenge. So things will be falling into place as they're planned. You can always keep an eye on the Slow Food USA website, and we will be posting information there as soon as we have it for those of you who are interested in buying tickets to events, things like this. So I think with that sort of framework and background, I'd like to talk a little bit about the delegate selection process specifically. So the delegate selection, as Richard mentioned, has been formulated this year in response to two things: to the direction given to us through the strategic planning process to align with our strategic direction that indicates a desire to give chapters more local autonomy, more ability to be the interpreters and leaders who then also engage at the national and international level with the slow food movement. So this is one goal, and then the second is to spread this idea of inclusiveness and transparency, and again create a really nice, streamlined, simple system that will have less room for obfuscation than perhaps some folks have experienced in the past. So the application is now available online at the Slow Food USA website. It is underneath the What We Do tab, and you want to find Participate in Terra Madre to find all the information on delegate applications. The applications must be submitted online. They cannot be submitted in hard copy or via email. And they are due March 31st. So that is a hard deadline. They are due March 31st by 11:59 p.m. Eastern. As you can imagine, we get a pretty large volume of applications and need to stick to these deadlines in order to be able to process them and to communicate with folks effectively. Now, what is new in this year's delegate selection process, and probably of significance to the folks on this call, is that each chapter in good standing is able to invite 2 delegates to join the U.S. delegation. One of these delegates should be a representative of their chapter leadership, a leader who has an understanding of the theme, Loving the Earth, which is the theme of Terra Madre Salone del Gusto this year. So someone who has experience in connecting the environmental, the agriculture, and the gastronomic together, and who has a passion for that work. You should also focus that slot on a leader who maybe has not gone to Terra Madre, Salone del Gusto before, someone for whom this can be that catalytic moment when they really understand the full breadth and scope of what slow food is able to do. The second dedicated delegate slot is for a community leader. So this is someone that either has been engaged with your chapter for a while and has been a very good partner and who you would like to understand and cultivate through the Slow Food Network. Or this is an excellent opportunity as well to reach out to partners who maybe will help to diversify the work that you do. So these are both excellent opportunities for you to build the capacity of a chapter, and we hope will add to the diversity and representation that we're able to bring to the U.S. delegation. If you're interested in some evaluation matrix, the ones that we'll be using for the general application process here in the national office, those are also posted online and easy to find on that same participate page of the Slow Food USA website. So after these applications are handed in on March 31st, and I do want to note that one new element of this application process is also the submission of a recommendation form. This form is also online, and this is a required element for all complete applications, whether a chapter designated delegate or a general applicant. A recommendation form must be submitted online, matched to that application in order for it to be complete and for it to be processed. The general applications will be reviewed and filled after the chapter designated delegates have been selected. In addition to these chapter designated delegates, we have set aside 20 delegate spots from the allocation from Slow Food International that is given to the US, which we are still waiting on final numbers for. We have set that aside for a newly forming association, Slow Food Turtle Island, which will be an indigenous-led slow food association in North America. And they will be populating those slots, those 20 slots. So if there are any indigenous peoples that you're working with that you would like to suggest that they apply, they may apply via the same system on the Slow Food USA website, and those will be forwarded to that forming group in order to create that piece of our delegation. So the applications are submitted on April 29th. Oh, you can't hear me? Okay. You're good now. Now you can hear me? Okay, all right. So on April 29th, we will inform all the applicants of the results, whether they've been accepted, declined, or are now placed onto our wait list. Then there's a pretty quick turnaround. May 16th, they must accept or decline that offer. This is also a very hard date. So if you are a chapter leader who is arranging for chapter designated delegates, please be in communication with them to help them to understand what the commitment means for them to go. We really do need a firm count on May 16th. June 1st, we will need them to submit their flight details to Italy in order to arrange for their lodging and ground transportation. And then September 22nd through 26th is the event. So I think this covers most of the pieces of the delegate selection process. There are also many documents on our website, again, that you can review. The only last detail maybe worth going over is that there are 2 levels of delegates which you can apply for. One being a fully sponsored delegate, which means that ground transportation and lodging in Italy, in Turin, are covered, though international travel is not covered. The other being a self-paying delegate, which means that you have a delegate pass, which will get you into any of the delegate-only pieces of the event, which are still being determined, which those may or may not be. But that the rest of the trip, you are able to cover your own expenses to go. So as you're planning for Terra Madre, you want to think about the role of chapters in guiding this delegate process. So certainly selecting the delegates is one piece. I have heard of chapters having great success in having gatherings of the delegates from their area beforehand. We will be distributing a list of any additional delegates from your state that are selected beyond these designated delegates. And we intend to do that before the May 16th deadline so that all chapter leaders will know who has been accepted into the delegation from their area. And cultivating a sense of camaraderie amongst them, helping them to know each other, helping them to understand what the event will be like, really goes a long way to achieving that goal of having them give back to your chapter and to continue to build the network in your region. So a little work on the front end we find pays off incredibly well. The role of the delegates. So this is also a question that has often been raised, and there is one answer which is applicable to most slow food initiatives, which is that in large part Terra Madre is what you make of it, and this delegate role is what you make of it. So as you're thinking of whom to invite, you also want to think of someone who will be excited to take advantage of this opportunity. In addition to that, there are 3 very specific requirements of being a delegate as well. So the first is to attend the meeting of the National Association. While you're there, there will be a Slow Food USA meeting, and we do expect all delegates to make the time in their schedule to come and participate in that meeting. The second will be to tell your story and to share your experience at the Slow Food USA booth. We will be scheduling a slot of time for each and every delegate to share the foods that they produce, or photos of the work that they do, or simply to be present and engage with the international community that will be coming through this event. And the third is to attend the workshops and the meetings and to be an active participant in the programming that is made available to you, to take notes and to bring this back to your community and to bring the learning that you have back and share in your community. And we strongly encourage chapters to make space for that to happen upon delegates' return. If you would like to come to Terra Madre Salone del Gusto, but have already had the opportunity to be a delegate, or perhaps don't want to stay the 4 full days, which is also required of delegates, then you might consider attending as a visitor. There will be, in this format, as I was saying, the goal to bring in the full community without any obstacle. There will be no charge to be part of the marketplace, which will have many educational elements to it, and should be a really beautiful event, judging by some of the other outdoor events, such as Slow Cheese, that Slow Food International has been doing for some years. This should be a very lively and engaging place to be. Visitors also have full access to all of the ticketed events. So the various tastings and dinner dates and some of the larger scale presentations that will be made by some of the luminaries of the food movement will all also be available. So if you're attending as a visitor, again, there is information on our website which will be updated frequently. And we strongly encourage you to consider this option as well if you have attended as a delegate and would like to leave that space open, or if you want to bring a larger group from your area to attend. All right. I think that's it on those topics, yeah. So I tried to go fairly quickly through this without getting too far into the weeds, because I know that there can be a lot of details to sort out, and they vary greatly between various chapters. Some chapters have, sort of smaller fundraising capacity. Some chapters have really robust fundraising capacity. Some chapters are not incredibly involved. Some chapters are very involved. So what this looks like and what this means to you, I know can vary quite widely, which is why we wanted to give a good solid chunk of time for you all to ask questions and to have a nice lively discussion. So if you have any questions, this is the time to enter them into the chat box. And if that proves problematic, we might just go ahead and unmute everyone and see if we can do it that way as well. So I'm going to start with a question from Rich Vergili, who is in Philly, if I'm remembering correctly. And Rich says, what role does the chapter leadership have in selecting the 2 delegates as you defined beyond a recommendation? Rich, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you because I'm not sure that I totally understand. So I'm going to unmute you, Rich, and maybe you can ask that question for me.
Oh, it was unclear to me what role does the leadership play. In other words, we would put up someone to be a delegate from the leadership and also one from the community. Other than a recommendation, is there anything else that you want from us?
Nope, that's all you have to do. So make the invitation to the delegate. When that delegate fills out their application form, they should check the box that says, I am a chapter designated delegate, and fill in the name of the chapter. And then when you fill out the recommendation form, you just need to check that same box and say, I'm writing this on behalf of a chapter designated delegate. The goal in doing that is so that if that delegate needs help in fundraising and funding to get themselves to Terra Madre, you can start on that early. You can start right now, knowing that that person will have a guaranteed spot. You can also start right now to prepare them for how they will participate once they're there, how they'll participate once they're back. So the requirements on our end are low, but we hope that it's as far as what you need to, the information you need to give to us. But we are hoping that this long lead time will give you the room and the autonomy to really engage with those people and to support them.
Thank you.
Great, sure, you're welcome. Okay, so let me just scroll down here 1 second. So Zeno asks, I love the word gather. It also brings to mind the title of a Hank Shaw book, Hunt, Gather, Cook. So thank you for that feedback, Zeno. He notes that we are using a nice good old Anglo-Saxon word gathering rather than perhaps our muscle memory of conviviality or something else like this. So thanks for the feedback, Zeno. Cindy asks if chapter delegates are guaranteed a spot. Yes, that's right. For those 2 delegates, they are absolutely guaranteed a spot. 1 chapter leader and 1 community partner, community leader, someone who you think is worth cultivating and who would really benefit from this experience. The only case in which they would be turned down for a spot is if they fill out, if you don't get the recommendation in, or if they don't fill their application out, or if they fill their application out, but it turns out they're, the CEO of Yum Foods or something like this, in which case we would obviously contact you to have a discussion about that. But yes, they are guaranteed a spot. Absolutely. Okay. Oh, and sorry, I want to say one more thing on that point is that those spots are non-transferable. So, for example, you can't say, well, we don't have anyone on the leadership team who wants to go, so we're going to send 2 community leaders, or we don't know anyone in the community, which is a whole another problem. So we want to send 2 chapter leaders. They're non-transferable. So if you can't fill both of them, then you can only fill one, and the others are put back into the general pool for general applicants. Okay, Dave Bangert, how common is it for chapters to financially support delegates? Anecdotally, I think it's fairly common. I might actually just go ahead. I'm going to press the unmute button, and we'll see how we do on that. And then if you are part of a chapter that does do fundraising for your delegates, we'd love to hear from you. So 1, 2, 3, here we go. Anybody want to jump in?
This is John Haddad. Slow Food RVA has helped delegates with their travel for the last 2 rounds of Terra Madres.
Great. Thanks, John. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and unless someone jumps in the next 30 seconds, anybody? All right. I'm going to mute us all again, but I would say that is a really great question to put up on the Facebook leaders page as well, the group page, because we don't collect that in the annual report, so I don't have an exact number about it. But I think Richard wants to jump in also. Yeah. Well, no, I think you're still on. Oh, there you are. Sorry. Okay, 1 sec. He is just going to try checking our settings here so that Richard can jump in and make a comment. I do see Dave Bangert saying that they provide 80% of airfare to delegates. And I know from my time with Slow Food Chicago, we also provided airfare to folks in the region, so beyond the Chicago limits as well. So I think it's a fairly common activity.
I do. Can you hear me now? Oh, that's great. And I do think that, the issue of what we see through the chapter reports is our amazing network of local chapters are very effective in staging events that raise funds for purposeful outcomes. And we know that many of you are raising funds to send delegates to Slow Meat in the past year, or to send participants to the upcoming spring break, School Garden Spring Break in North Carolina that our School Garden team is leading. What our hope was with this Terra Madre edition, there are many things we don't know about this new format, this new amazing opportunity for engagement, There are things about the booth and the mechanics of it all we don't know. But one thing we could control at this stage was to simplify the process so that the sooner you know who you're pulling onto your team as delegates to represent and to attend Terra Madre, then the sooner we can begin to figure out what are the resources needed to prepare them to make it to Terra Madre. And I know from my experiences, this can be, I've never had a passport, so there's a delay time in how to get a passport up and running, how to raise funds. And it does tend to be all over the map, and I agree with Megan that probably a great place to post some of the best ideas of past fundraising strategies. It is an interesting array of individuals raising their funds and chapters rallying around them. And I think that experience is one that the sooner we can get to that work, the better, and therefore, hence the simpler method for nominating and accepting delegates.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And I think it also speaks to we've received a lot of questions. How does the strategic direction for Slow Food USA impact the work that chapters do? And I've often said part of what the strategic direction is about is acknowledging what we do really well and shedding some of the things we don't do well. And one of the things that we have consistently seen that our chapters do incredibly well is to connect their local representatives to national and international level gatherings. So I think looking to chapters to support this kind of engagement and support travel and support delegates to get there is a model that we will be hoping to continue and support even more as we move forward. I think it's a very rewarding activity on everyone's part. So we have some great examples coming in on the chat box if anyone, but I see they're all just marked to the organizer. So I'm going to read them out loud since maybe not everyone can read them. So let's see. Gwen Christ says that they have, and Gwen's out of Utah, if I'm not mistaken, they have a bake sale and raise funds for their delegates, and they were able to raise over $1,000 during that. Slow Food Huron Valley in Michigan pays the travel for all of their delegates. Kathleen Less from Slow Food Sacramento says they also use Kickstarter to raise money, and they were able to raise enough for airfare and a few basic expenses, so giving each delegate about a $1,500 stipend. It's very, very generous, very awesome. I have a couple questions mixed in here. And then Beth Osmond from Slow Food Chicago says they typically have so much interest in being part of the delegation. It seems, okay, so this is a question. Sorry, I thought this was a different bit of text, but I'll go ahead and read through it. We typically have so much interest in being part of the delegation that it may seem less transparent for us as a board to just choose two before they go through an application process. That's some really, really excellent feedback, which I do really appreciate. I can certainly understand that. I would say that there is no reason not to encourage people to go through an application process at the same time. The general application pool is open and people are able to apply, but I do understand that could create some tension as we change from a past system to a different system. And I'd be happy to talk through offline if you want some support in making that happen. And perhaps as this becomes our regular practice, it will be easier for chapters to have lead time to develop their own evaluation protocols, which might also help in some of the larger and more developed chapters that have a long history of doing this to create a local application process that you guys could vet. Okay. So I'm going to hop back to a couple questions. Loretta asks a really good question. She says, if our delegates want the family to attend with them, should the family come as visitors or as a self-paid delegate? Right. Okay. So what I would recommend in that circumstance is if the delegate who your chapter would like to select, or if the chapter is able to provide funding for them to attend as a self-paid delegate, so to forego the ground travel and lodging, then I would recommend that you designate them as a self-paid delegate and then have their family come as visitors. I think this would be the easiest. You could make sure that everyone had the same housing, whereas otherwise the delegate housing, everyone would have to be accepted as a delegate. We do anticipate getting over 500 applications for this, so it's quite difficult to say whether a family, would snag 2, 3, or 4 of those. That could be quite challenging. So I would suggest that the family come as visitors, that your chapter designated delegate comes as a self-paying delegate. And then in all honesty, it's quite easy to share the pass sometimes if you need to. Can you hear me? No? No? Okay. Yeah? Okay, great. Okay, I'm trying to keep up with all your questions here, so give me just a second. And if that didn't answer the question sufficiently, please feel free to hop on the chat as well. Okay. Joe asks if prior Terra Madre attendance disqualifies chapter leaders from being delegates this time. So in the spirit of trying to grant greater autonomy to our chapters, nothing disqualifies your designated delegate except for clear violation of the slow food principle. So, I gave the example of like Yum Foods CEO, or if the head developer from Monsanto was someone that you chose, then we would certainly nix that one. But other than that, there is no disqualification. I strongly recommend that you choose someone for whom this can be a growth in their leadership. So were I in your shoes, yes, I would probably prioritize someone who hasn't been before. But no, we are in no way going to disqualify a chapter designated delegate unless they are in clear violation of Slow Food's ethos. Okay. A quick question from Cindy, and then a larger question from Zeno, which I'm going to hand off to Richard. So Cindy asks, is ground transportation and lodging paid by Slow Food USA? No. Ground transportation, lodging, and food during the event are covered by Slow Food International for a set number of delegates. Now, we do have the opportunity for a larger delegation if we also include self-paying delegates. So those are delegates who would cover their own ground transportation, lodging, and food during the event. The sponsored delegates are the ones who would receive ground transportation, lodging, and food during the event, which is covered by Slow Food International for all of the delegates who come as fully funded delegates. Okay, great. Zeno asks, does the Gather Partner Campaign model, could this be inspirational for local chapters and local campaigns?
And I assume I have unmuted myself successfully. Great. Zeno, this is a great question. I think certainly if I were to go back, maybe I can pull this up because I find this a useful image of what the scope of our work is meant to be. When we looked at the partnering with other organizations, the campaigning, the calls to action for individuals and communities, regardless of whether they're members, as well as the gathering, these 3 areas of work where we will be devoting our time and our creativity and our resources, these are not areas of work that we suddenly invented and thought, gosh, we should be working in these areas. These are both things that are integral to our DNA at both the local and the national level, at the global as well as the hyper local. So if you were in your chapter to see that, this is the framework by which we want to address our work. What do we do to partner? What do we do to gather? What do we do to campaign? Marvelous. But it may be that some chapters are really all about heavy into partnering, and they do very little gathering and very little campaigning, or some formula, some variation on that theme. I think that we have struck upon this importance of why the presence of slow food in the community matters is because it inspires so many other organizations and individuals to run with these good ideas. They feel welcome and they rally around them. Whether the campaigns that are run locally, and when we again look through the chapter reports, when we meet and travel, we see that there are so many campaigns that you are engaged with, that you may lead, you may support. The campaigns that we lead, and I do detect a real appetite to campaign both nationally and globally around the urgency of biodiversity. There may be a certain moment where we're all lock in step, singing the same song for the same goals. But I think unlike maybe slow food of old, where we assumed that was the case, and therefore our campaign must be your campaign, and at exactly that moment, and that all of the activity must be channeled through the chapter. We recognize that this has put undue stress upon a volunteer network. And so there are times and there are elements of work that we will manage at the national level. And it may be that the campaign work is more aggressively devoted to communicating directly to individuals who may or may not be part of the chapter. There will be elements that the chapter can pick up from the campaign. But what we have found, even with slow meat, was that the interpretation and the delay of how to take elements of slow meat and then remake it to fit into your own chapter rhythm and priority areas and language is, of course, totally in line with our DNA. We hope that it inspires activity on the ground, but we're not going to be issuing declarations that everyone must now rally around this issue at this moment. But in terms of taking the model to think about the work that you do, we hope that this is helpful for local chapters just as much as we hope that this will be helpful to our global network. It is by no means a secret that whether it's Slow Food Germany, which is very robust, or Slow Food Italy, which has a great long history, or Slow Food in the UK, which is struggling to figure out what does it mean to be slow food in the UK, is that this recognition that these are areas of strength where we excel could be a lens with which to look at the work we are already doing. And when we look at that through a lens and realize, oh, it's actually partnering that we're doing, or it's gathering, or it's campaigns, that we may begin to focus on the things that we do well and abandon some of the things that maybe we don't do well, or the current context doesn't call for it. So I hope that answers your question, Zeno, that by all means, this is what we hope is helpful for you to understand what your role in the ecosystem that is food and the ecosystem that is slow food.
Great, thanks. So do we have any more questions? We do have a good chunk of time left. Of course, if you feel satiated in your curiosity, then we can end a little bit early, but this is your opportunity to ask any other questions about the theory of gathering, how you can expect that to inform the work of the National Association moving forward, or any of the details about Terra Madre, Salone del Gusto presence for the U.S. this year. So Zeno asks if there will be a summary of gatherings in the annual reports. I think that you are referring to the chapter annual reports, which we have and will continue to collect information on the numbers of events, which I think gathering is another word for events, that chapters conduct. So, yep, those will definitely still be collecting that and synthesizing that information into the annual chapter report. Scott, thank you for reiterating that. I think I lost this question a little further up in the chat box. So Scott asks, can you discuss recommendations beyond the 2 designated delegates, and how many? So Scott, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you to make sure that I'm addressing this question correctly. All right, Scott, are you there? I think maybe you have yourself muted. So if you feel like hopping on, if you're in a quiet enough place to go ahead, otherwise use the chat box if I'm off track on this. So
okay, I'm unmuted now. Go.
Hello.
Thank you.
So for the recommendations, do you mean like how many people are you allowed to recommend to write a recommendation for?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of saying it. I mean, we're really excited to kind of spread the information around the conference itself, and we have some people interested beyond obviously beyond the two that we'd like to designate. But so is there any limit, and what do you suggest about that kind of thing?
Sure. There is no limit. You can write as many recommendations as you would like to. In preparing those recommendations, it would probably be helpful to look at the evaluation criteria that we're going to be using for that general applicant pool. And it's up on the website, and I'll also just give a quick overview of it right now as well. So it's going to be looking for a few different elements. And one of the key ones is, does that delegate exemplify this theme of loving the earth? This is something they should address in their own application. So if you have someone that you really, really want to come, then you may also help them with their delegate application. Just because in past experience reading these, we're not evaluating the quality of the writing, but sometimes it can be difficult to understand the scope of a person's work, which is also another reason for this recommendation. So we are looking for someone who represents this theme of loving the earth. We also are looking for evidence that this person is a leader in their community, either an emerging leader or an established community leader. We are looking for someone who represents slow food values, so whose work clearly shows their commitment to good, clean, and fair food, whether that be through direct engagement with slow food already or through an interpretation of those values. This may even be the first time they've ever heard of slow food. Then one other criteria would be slow food participation. So if this is someone who you have worked with and have a good relationship with, make sure to put that in the recommendation as well. So that's the general evaluation matrix. Then there are a few weighted qualities that we're looking for as well. So there will be preference given to people coming from professions that can be either less lucrative or less able to attend events like this in general. So farmers, chefs, food producers, restaurant and food industry laborers, and agricultural laborers will all be given a preference in that general application. We'll also be looking for people who help to make it a more inclusive delegation and help to represent the diversity of the U.S. So for youth, people of color, and people who have identified themselves as low income or coming from more challenging economic circumstances, that all will add to it as well. Good things to mention in your recommendation if they're fitting. And then we're waiting it for people who have been recommended by someone within the network. So having someone from your leadership, from your chapter say that they recommend that person will also be a weighted criteria that we're working with. Does that answer the question sufficiently, Scott?
Yes, thank you very much.
Great, you're very welcome, yeah. Zena, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you so you can clarify your question about the annual report for me. So I've unmuted you on my end. If you wanna just hit the unmute on your end, then I think we'll be able to hear you, Zena.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
No, I wondered whether you guys are going to pull like a little report from the annual chapter reports where you give examples of gathering that you think really exemplify slow food values as you see it.
That's a great suggestion. And we will certainly produce, as I mentioned, a synthesized report that will pull out highlights, things that seem like highlights from our perspective. So that will be available this spring. And I also again strongly recommend making use of that Facebook group. And if your chapter does something that you think is super cool, put it up there so that we can know about it, because the annual reports are one great way of collecting and disseminating that information. But the peer-to-peer learning, I think, has just incredible value and helps us to see what's going on as well.
Yeah, and I also think that the extraordinary amount of information that's in the chapter reports, this year we will be looking at them, sharing them, but especially looking at them with even greater clarity and concentration around the three areas and around the gatherings. They may tease out the level of information that we're hoping to gather. We may need to find other ways to tease out more of the information as we look nationally at what is the scale and scope of gatherings that we can manage, and the recommendations of what seems to work at the regional or local level, because we are still learning as how to keep how to provide the opportunity, the conversion moment opportunity that only so many people are able to attend at Terra Madre. What could that look like on our soil? And the scale of what we hope the next thing in Denver will look like. We hope to go from what this past year was 200 delegates at Slow Meat to double that amount. That the surrounding Slow Food Festival could be in the 1, 2, 3, 4,000 people. And as we look at that business model, we will share that with the network so that we can look at, what are already some fairly, I think, important festivals in our slow food world, like the Sebastopol Gravenstein Apple Festival. And we would like to learn, as you may, what is the scale of what they pull off and how replicable is that in other local settings.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Kathleen Less has a clarifying question about the delegate selection. And she asks, does each chapter select their own 2 delegates and have them apply for Slow Food USA's confirmation? Or is there a chance that several in the community apply and are selected? And the answer is yes to both. So yes, the chapter should make 2 specific invitations to the delegation. And you can be certain that those are confirmed. And only in some sort of extraordinary circumstance would be declined. And then if there are other people in your community who you think would make excellent delegates, then yes, absolutely they should apply. They'll go through the general evaluation process, and they have just as good a chance as anyone of being selected. We will be keeping an eye towards regional representation to make sure that we try to fill in any geographic gaps that we may get applicants from where there aren't chapters to nominate those people. And looking to fill other demographic gaps in the delegation. But certainly everyone should apply. Everyone who you think should come should apply. The 2 designated spots are meant to, as I mentioned, assist you in planning, assist you in fundraising, and sort of pull out the 2 people who absolutely must go.
Right. Those 2 will not compete with any other nominations from your region. So that is, I think, the real departure from previous years.
Yes, exactly. Anne Cromley, hello, Anne from Vermont, asks if there are youth activity gatherings being organized this September that highlight and strengthen the connections built from Youth Terra Madre this past October. It'd be helpful to know this information moving forward on fundraising efforts and connections. So what I can say to you, Anne, is that I have no details to confirm that these will happen, but it is an incredibly safe assumption that there will be youth events. Absolutely, there will be things organized around the Slow Food Youth Network. I'm sure that there will be, besides some of the people who work continuously all year round on the youth network, also being at Terra Madre, Salone del Gusto, I guarantee that there will be a continued presence for that group that will capitalize on some of the successes of Youth Terra Madre. All right, I'm going to take one last call for questions, and then I think we might be able to wrap this call up. Okay, if you have any more, do type them in. Our next call will be on March 25th, again from 4 to 5:20 p.m. So that's a Friday afternoon. Please do join us. We will continue to discuss the implementation of the strategic direction and how it relates to and is impacting the work that we're doing moving forward. I really do appreciate all of you taking the time to join us. For anyone you know who was unable to join, this recording will be posted on the Leader Resources page of our website, shared out in next week's Leader Links email, and posted to the Slow Food USA Chapter and Community Leaders Facebook group. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to unmute us all just for a moment so we can sign off together. Okay, ready? There we go. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Hey.
Bye.